Today, we unpack the Kelce brothers both playing in the Super Bowl and how it relates to having divided loyalties between God and the world. Let's unpack it.
This is the Unpackin' It podcast, where we relate big sports stories to life and biblical truth. Our mission is to challenge, encourage, and inspire you to follow Jesus and become more like him with sports conversations that truly matter.
That's what I'm talking about!
Coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hey, I just want to thank you guys one last time for being here. It's the best day ever.
Here is the president of Unpackin' It Ministries, Bryce Johnson.
Welcome to the Unpacking It podcast, where we unpack parallels, metaphors, and topics in sports that relate to life and faith. I'm Bryce Johnson, joined by my co-host, Luke Heaton. On today's episode, we're unpacking the Super Bowl, taking a look at the Kelce brothers. And what about their mom? How's she going to root for both of them the entire game? And so we'll get into all of that. Thank you so much for being with us. Thanks to everybody watching on YouTube. Hopefully you have subscribed to the channel, or if you're listening to us on Apple, Spotify, anywhere else podcasts are found. Also, those of you that are watching on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, we're so glad to have you. You can always email me, bryce@unpackingit.com. Let us know your thoughts about this show. Any feedback is always helpful. You can also check out our website, unpackingit.com. While you're there, be sure to subscribe to our devotional that goes out Monday, Wednesday, Friday through email. And so we'll send it to you for free, and we discuss those devotional topics on this show. And so you can read it there first and then hear us unpack that topic a little bit more on the podcast. And so we are brought to you by Sugar Creek Coffee. At Sugar Creek Coffee Roasters, they specialize in handcrafted, small batch, artisan roasted coffee. It is delicious. It is fantastic. Go to sugarcreekcoffee.com. Use the promo code UNPACK to save some money. And so here's what's great. They don't roast until you actually place an order. So you can be assured the freshest roasted coffee is delivered to your door. And so check out sugarcreekcoffee.com. Use the promo code UNPACK. All right, Luke, it is Super Bowl week. I know I'm fired up for this matchup. You got two number one seeds. You've got so many great storylines. Andy Reid and his former team. Nick Sirianni was actually let go by Andy Reid. You've got two amazing quarterbacks, two of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then you've got the Kelce brothers, which we're going to talk about a lot today. But first thoughts on the Super Bowl, who you're rooting for, who you picking to win?
Yeah, I mean, as you list all of that, I'm thinking, wow, there are a ton of storylines here because it's already been coined as the Kelce Bowl. I had no idea Sirianni was in Kansas City when Andy Reid went there. And no, he did say it was not a contentious firing or letting go, but still chip on his shoulder, which I'm probably out on that phrase in general, whatever that phrase means. But
that's right.
I'm rooting for the Chiefs. One, because it'd be difficult to root for fellow NFC East member Eagles.
You are a Cowboys fan.
As a Cowboys fan. In addition, my mom and her side of the family, all from Kansas, and they're very excited right now. So my mom's got a couple new Chiefs shirts that just got delivered to her house. She's been sending pictures of her wearing them all week. So rooting for the Chiefs, rooting to see Mahomes get another ring.
All right, so I'm on the other side of it, and I'm actually going for Philadelphia. I found myself rooting for Nick Foles in Philadelphia a few years ago as well. So I'm back on the bandwagon, but it's actually a convenient bandwagon. My dad grew up in Philly. I've got tons of family members in Philly, loyal listeners in Philly. And so I'm good rooting for the Eagles. And guess what? Nick Sirianni went to the same high school as my mom in Jamestown, New York. So my mom grew up in Jamestown. And so when my mom was in school, Nick's dad was the football coach. So pretty cool. So there's some connections there for me.
Okay. That's fair.
I'm rooting for the Eagles, but I also think they're better because of the defense and both lines, offensive line, defensive line, I think is
Yep.
the difference in the game. And so I'll give the edge to the Eagles there as well. But I expect a great game. And again, so many storylines building up this week to the big game. But the one we're going to focus on today is the Kelce brothers. And for one, I think their personalities are great. The fact that we have a Super Bowl with two brothers is really remarkable. Like, you have to take a step back and say, wow. I mean, we know about the Manning brothers, and there have been a number of brothers over the years that have made it to the highest level, and the Diggs brothers are doing great right now. And
I think the McCourty twins were
McCourty
both on the
twins.
Patriots in a Super Bowl.
That's right, same team. So, but to have them go against each other for the first time is really cool. And so, do you like the Kelce brothers? Do you prefer one to the other?
So, prior to last week, I did not have a favorite. But then Travis Kelce showed up at the Kansas basketball game at Allen Fieldhouse. So he's got the edge now. 'Cause
Nice.
I'm, of course, a big Jayhawk fan. But I mean, they're both tremendous. Their podcast is hilarious. Their stories. But the cool thing is, I was listening to them talk this week. They're just classic brothers. Not in the sense that, like, oh, we always beat each other up, we hate each other, but they love each other. There's friendly competition. They both root for each other. And individually, like you said, their personalities are hilarious. So on their own, they're great, but together and when they're in the same room or same podcast or interviews, it's very good entertainment. Easy to root for.
Yes, and I am a huge Travis Kelce fan. I have been for a long time. From a fantasy football perspective, had him in the early days, and I just think he is hands down the best tight end in the league. It's not even close. Like, the second best tight end, I call it George Kittle, way down the list in my mind. So what Travis Kelce continues to do, and the idea too that the Chiefs move on from Tyreek Hill, they have decent wide receivers. It's all about Travis Kelce. He makes that offense go from a weapon standpoint. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is the guy that gets him the ball, but Kelce opens up that offense in so many ways, and then from a personality standpoint, so likable, energetic, fun. I'm all in.
Yep.
Now, what we want to focus on today is really thinking about their mom. And I saw her interviewed with them last night during the NFL
and
opening
she's been
night.
interviewed all over. I mean,
All
she's been doing nonstop interviews.
And really, the question is, okay, who do you root for? How do you handle this game? And her answer makes sense. It's pretty, it's a good answer as far as I'm just rooting for the offense, because Jason Kelce is center on offense, Travis Kelce tight end. So all game, she's just cheering for touchdowns. Both teams score, and she wins. But the reality is, she still has divided loyalties.
Yeah.
She wants both teams. She wants both teams to win. She wants both of her, sons to play well. And we all know as sports fans, you eventually have to pick a side. Like, it's so difficult to root for two teams, because ultimately that one team is going to win. And so she's in a unique spot, having to kind of go back and forth the entire game.
I know. It would be interesting. Thankfully, they're both offensive players, so it's not like she's rooting for a corner and a wide receiver who every possession are going up against each other. But yeah, it's Travis Kelce, and after they won the AFC Championship, it said that, my mom can't lose. She can, though. Regardless, she's going to have a son that wins and a son that loses. And even for the Kelce brothers, one of them is going to win, and then one of them is going to, hey, my brother just lost the Super Bowl. The emotions, it's interesting. There's give and take for both directions.
The one thing too, though, they both have a Super Bowl win. So
I forgot that. So you were just praising Travis Kelce. I think Travis, his dominance the past couple years has caused us to remember how good Jason Kelce is. Like with their podcast, now Jason's kind of, because he's not, at least the past couple of years, the big personality in the media, entertaining as much as Travis has been. Jason hasn't been as much. But Jason's been dominating for years. He's a
Football-wise.
very, very good center. And yeah, I forgot he was on that Eagles championship team. He's very good.
I think that's your Dallas biasness. Your Dallas bias. Yeah, there you go.
Well, the Eagles O-line I'm terrified of, so.
That's right. No, he's been awesome. But actually, I read today that future Hall of Famer Jason Kelce. So that's a significant proclamation there. So we've got both these guys going head to head. The mom will be sitting in the crowd with a jersey, half Chiefs, half Travis, half Jason, half Eagles, and divided loyalties. And so she'll go back and forth the entire game. And so the topic that we want to discuss today is, when it comes to our own lives, how often do we battle? And really, it's a daily battle of divided loyalties. God versus the world, God versus our selfishness. And so we want to take a look at a couple different verses in the Bible. We'll start with James 1:5-8. It tells us, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. But when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do. And so, Luke, what jumps out to you when you think about the divided loyalty described here in James?
Yeah, so I think the book of James is, encouraging Christians to continue to endure trials and suffering, and this double-mindedness is antithetical to faith and trust in God. And our previous episode, we talked about trusting in God, and faith is really important. And this verse is encouraging because it doesn't say, God's he's a little finicky on handing out wisdom. No, he hands out wisdom and grants wisdom. He's eager to ask for wisdom every time. He'll give it to you. But the important note there is, you actually have to believe that, one, God's real, he's powerful, he has wisdom. You can't just, he may or may not. No, are you loyal to God? Is he your God? Do you trust him completely? If you're just this back and forth, like, he's not going to give you wisdom because you actually don't believe he can give you wisdom.
Gosh. Yeah, no, I think the blessing that comes from that kind of loyalty and faith, wisdom is that's what we need. That's what we need each day is wisdom. Yeah. And so in verse 8, their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do. And I think that word unstable, it's like, if we're unstable in life, okay, well, let's take a look at where our loyalty is. And are we going back and forth between the world and God? And all right, one minute we're rooting for God, and I'm proud to be on his team, and I'm committed, and I'm all in. And then all of a sudden the world pulls us in, and we're enticed by temptation and sin and the pleasures of this life, and we start rooting for the world. We start rooting for our selfishness, and we become unstable, and we're just tossing back and forth like the waves. And so we have to really evaluate that in our lives and acknowledge it, and also recognize too that it is a daily decision, a daily commitment of where's my loyalty? Where is my heart toward? Is my heart toward God? Is my heart aligned with God, or is it a little bit over here, a little bit over there? It's divided loyalty.
Well, and it's, this verse isn't saying you better have perfect faith or God's not going to give you wisdom. None of us have perfect faith, but I think it's getting at, we're not going to take advantage of God and say, oh no, he said he'll give me wisdom if I ask. Okay, but let's look at your faith. Have you had faith in, like you saying, the daily surrender to, I'm going to trust God daily, ask him for wisdom daily? Or Have you been pursuing the world, loyal to the world? All right, I need something from God. Let me ask him. And then I'll go right back to the world and
Mm,
loyal to the world.
mm,
That you can't expect wisdom from God if you only ask for it when it's convenient or when you really need it. And then you continue to always trust the world for your other wisdom that you need. Like,
mm.
like you said, it's a daily. I'm walking with God. It's not perfect faith without blemish, because we're still struggle to comprehend all the things of God. We still need God's help to have increased faith and belief. But I think that the point is, where are our loyalties?
Mm.
Are we continually going to the world for wisdom, or are we going to God over and over again?
Mm. No, I think that's key. I want to unpack that a little bit more. The wisdom of the world versus the wisdom of God. The other verse we want to get into as well is Matthew 6:24, and it says, "No one can serve two masters." And this is the amplified version. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. You've probably heard before, God and money. And so mammon kind of can translate into money, possessions, fame, status, or whatever is valued more than God. And so what do we value in life? And what are we serving? And so if we're going back and forth and all right, yeah, money is my master because all of my affections, my heart, my time, my desires are attached to success and money and possessions and status, and so that's what I'm chasing after. Or am I serving God and whatever direction He wants me to go, and whatever He's called me to do in His Word? Am I doing that? And when we do, and when we are fully loyal to Him, our perspective then on the world changes. And so we are committed to him. We are loyal to him, and our eyes are fixed on him, and we're able to serve him with our whole heart. But if we're still, intrigued by by mammon, everything else, valuing other things more than the Lord, then we have to be honest with ourselves. Well, what is our master? Who are we serving?
Yep.
Are we serving the world?
And that language master is fascinating because I mean, I think of Romans 5 and 6. Paul uses that language a lot on basically you had a master, you were a slave to sin, and then you were slaves to God, basically. We have a new master who's good and gracious and gentle and actually wants and seeks our good and has gone so far that the Father sent his Son to give his life for our good and for us. But the language is still there on the be someone being your master. It's not, oh yeah, I show up 9 to 5 and then you don't really care what I do. No. That's strong language, especially in that time in the world on, the master, like they demand all your loyalty to from their servants. God is our master. All our loyalty ought to be going to him, not this compartmentalizing on, you know what, I give you a couple days a week. I give you this area of influence, but over here is all mine. That's not what we're reading in God's word on this. God is our master. He's a good master, and he's gentle, and he's gracious, and he's good towards us, but he's still our master and demands our loyalty.
Yes, and like we talked about from a football standpoint, eventually a team wins, and the same thing. Eventually, a master takes over, and so we can kind of play the game, go back and forth for a while in life, but eventually, if we value something more than God and we get sucked into that, and we start, that money or that success, almost black hole, so to speak, just kind of it sucks us in, and that becomes our master, and that becomes what our life is all about. And so we have to be, very, very aware of this and be willing every day to say, okay, God, I want you to be the master passion of my heart. I love that saying. That is the master passion of my heart, and my greatest desire is to serve you. And to your point about the phrasing of master, serve master. And so that putting God in his proper place and having that open hands of surrender, that open heart of surrender. All right, God, what do you want from me today? But what do you want to do with me? And that it's this loving master too. And so I think sometimes there's a negative connotation with that word. He like you said, he only wants what's best for us.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to have that heart that's aligned with him. And again, the undivided loyalty. And so that's the key part. So Luke, for you and I, this is a daily battle for us as well. We're in the trenches, just like everybody listening right now, and hopefully, we all desire to follow Jesus, but we also look around and we know that the world is offering us all sorts of things, and the wisdom of the world, like you mentioned, is always telling us certain things too. Hey, do this, buy that. This is the way to go. These are the 5 steps to the best life. This is the five steps to success.
Yeah.
And so all of that is pulling at us. It's out there. And we can, get caught up in it. And one second we're rooting for what the world offers, and then the next second we're rooting for what God offers. And the key for us is to be able to discern, okay, where are my loyalties? And I know for me, I'll start with this one. It really comes down to what pulls me, away from God's way is my selfishness, my pride, and my desire to do what I think is best, what I want to do. And it's like I want things to turn out this way in this time, quickly, and I get anxious or start trying to control things, and so now all of a sudden my loyalty is sort of in me being in charge. Not, am I being God? But yeah, kind of taking over the God role. I'm the master of my own life.
Yeah.
So I'm selfish and I want to be in control. So I know that one affects me. What comes to mind for you, Luke, as you think about this daily battle that we find ourselves in?
Yeah, so I mean, I think of, for being honest, many is the short answer. But I want to comment on what you said quickly, just because I think it's really relevant to a lot of our listeners, because it's ingrained in our culture, this individualism. Because, like you're saying, I want to be master of my own life. Oh, that's the same for me. Whether I am consciously thinking that, oftentimes it's just passive. The way I'm operating my life is, yeah, I'm going to be master of my own life. And I think in American culture, this individualism that has been at the core of our country, the pursuit of happiness, the American dream, pursuing success at all costs. Success and happiness is what we're aiming for. And even take it a step further, I was talking to an older gentleman. He was talking to me about maybe 100 or 200 years ago, there was a missionary from another country who came to America. And he was at a restaurant, and the restaurant said, "We serve no sovereign here." And it basically was meaning we have no king. In America, we have no king. You are your own master, essentially. And this gentleman at the restaurant was thinking, it's going to be difficult for anyone to come to Christ here. Because when I think of a great quote from a old German theologian, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he said, "When Christ calls a man, he bids him to come and die," which is this giving up your life, complete loyalty, serving, ultimately God the King. God is our King. He's our master. And in our culture, in our country, where we're our own master, our individual interest, I do what I want, what makes me happy, what is going to grant me success, that is not at all the call of Christ. The call of Christ is to lay your life down, to take up your own cross, to unite with Christ in his death, not just his resurrection, in his death, and then you're raised to life united with Christ. That just goes against our current American culture on, pursuing the American dream, personal happiness, individualism at all costs. So I just wanted to talk about that for a second, because I think that's really relevant to myself as I live my life and a lot of our listeners.
Absolutely. And along those lines too, one of the biggest, messages that we hear from the world is it's all about success and money. And that's how we gauge where we stand in life is, okay, how much money do we have in the bank? How much success compared to, other people. And like everybody else, I have seasons where I get caught up in that and days where I get caught up in that. And I'm listening to the world tell me you're not successful or you need to do this to be successful. And I have to decide, okay, is that what I'm going to pursue? Am I going to cheer for and root for what the world says and chase after that? Or am I going to do what God says? And my passion and desire is to please God and to be faithful to him and to be obedient to him, whether that means there's worldly success or not. That's not the question. It's am I honoring God, glorifying God, and being who he called me to be?
Yep.
And is my loyalty to him.
And it can even be clouded in what appears to be faithful. So I think of one of the most famous Baptist missionaries, Adoniram Judson. In
You're
his,
pulling out all sorts of names today, there, buddy.
I know, I can't remember if it's his biography or autobiography, but there's stories about his father raised him. You're going to be a great preacher. You're going to be a great preacher. You're going to have tons of influence. And that was his father's prayer for him. So he grew up with that. And as he was older, he had opportunities to pastor and preach at these huge churches in the Northeast and in the U.S. But he eventually realized, he even clouded it as, you know what, I want all this influence. I want to preach to the masses so they can all hear the message of Christ. But when he really looked at his heart, he was really chasing the platform and the influence.
Mhm.
And his name being big is not even close to what the point of it is. He eventually realized, you know what, preaching to all these people, all this influence, if it's for me, it doesn't matter at all. The point is not for me to have a bigger name. It's for Christ to have a big name. And again, to your point, our culture preaching success,
Performance.
performance. It just misses it completely. But your question, I think of, for me, this is a day-to-day thing on where my loyalties are that I really need to consider. And, I'm sure a lot of sports fans are listening to this show. And, when I got married almost 2 years ago, I quickly realized how often I schedule my life around sports.
Mm.
Eh,
Uh-oh.
I
Now
mean,
you're hitting home, Luke.
which prior to marriage, I didn't necessarily see that because, single guy, I could catch a lot of weeknight games. There's nothing to do. I mean, yeah, I'm going to watch a game. And then when I get married, it's, I've got responsibilities as a husband, especially when I think of wanting to be a father one day. I'm going to have responsibilities. And I've certainly learned a lot about you, a lot from you on, priorities change when you get married, when you have kids. And I've experienced the first element of that is priorities change when I got married. And God convicted me through my wife, Madeline, telling me, hey, you know what? Everything right now is surrounded on, can you watch this game? Can you watch this tournament? Rather than the more important things of life. And that was kind of eye-opening to me on, wow, my loyalties are sports, watching sports, being a sports fan. And being a sports fan is not inherently bad. Sports are amazing. And we've talked about that plenty of times on, there's a lot of good and amazing things in the sports world. But when it becomes a loyalty above the things of God, and my life isn't scheduled around serving God, loving his people, things are off.
Yeah, what we value more, and even riding the emotional wave of our teams winning and losing versus where our contentment comes from and our satisfaction comes from. That's a whole nother podcast. But you're right. Sports fight for our loyalties as well. So yeah, really, the question becomes, what are we spending the most time, money, thoughts on? And where are we getting our wisdom from? And when we go to God for wisdom, Are we coming at it, praying with a heart that is fully loyal to him,
Mhm.
faithful to him, a heart that desires what he desires?
And trusting that
Um,
his wisdom is better than the world's.
that's
Not,
right.
I kind of want to stick to the world's wisdom because it makes me feel better. It serves my own selfish interests. Sometimes God's wisdom is convicting, and it can be a hard pill to swallow because it contrasts our sin and our selfishness. It's like, you know what? God, you're right. He always is, but sometimes it's harder to hear because we've been pursuing the loyalties to the world.
That's right. Man, so as we wrap things up, what's the one thing we can pack up to unpack later? The big takeaway. I think for for me as we bring this home from the Kelsey, Mrs. Kelsey, she's going back and forth, divided loyalties, rooting for both, and ultimately she doesn't have to pick a side. It's fine. She's a mom, and she's got both sons. Pretty cool, remarkable, unique situation. But for us, we got to pick a side because, like we read earlier, you can't serve two masters. So we got to pick a side. And the encouragement, of course, is to choose God, to choose His way, to be loyal and committed to Him, and to live a life that no longer represents both the world and God. That it's no, my life represents God. It's not perfect, but day in, day out, it represents the life that he's called us to, and the reality that if Christ lives in us, then he should be shining through, and that
Yeah.
we should value him above all else. And one last thing too, we didn't talk too much about, but I think the world is always telling us about patterns and rhythms, the rhythms of the world. And Romans talks about this, Romans 12, the patterns of this world. And so are we pursuing the rhythms of Jesus, the life of
Mm.
Jesus, becoming more like Jesus, following Jesus? Or are we chasing the rhythms and the patterns of this world? And so that's something again that we have to evaluate and acknowledge each day as well. So
And I love the word rhythms because it pushes back against this cultural Christianity where Christianity is you put on your Sunday hat, you wipe the dust off your Bible that's been sitting on your bedside table since the previous Sunday. You know the things to say, and then you go home and then you put on your sports fan hat or you put on your corporate America hat or even your father hat and abandon your Christianity. But Christianity is following Jesus in the everyday rhythms. It's a holistic thing. It's not a part of your life. It is your whole life. If you've died with Christ and been raised to life united with him, your life is Christ.
Mm.
And again, we will be imperfect and we need God's grace to continue to establish these rhythms in our life to be more and more like Jesus. But again, we just really want to push back against this. You wear your Christianity hat and then you take it off. That's just missing the point completely.
that's right. We're trying to wear both hats at the same
Trying to wear
time.
both hats, yeah.
Both jerseys at the same time. And you're right about fatherhood too. We can get so caught up in being a dad that it's like, "Ah, I don't even have time to spend with the Lord." Well, what are we doing? I mean,
Yeah.
that's not the answer. It's hard. Trust me, it's hard. Two young daughters, it's hard. But that's uh,
And
I've
with
got
the
to
right
prioritize.
understanding
What
of
do I
God's
value?
wisdom is how can you be a godly dad without spending time with God? It's like,
That's
oh,
right.
it's too hard. I can't spend time with God this week. Well, no, you need the wisdom of God. That's abandoning time with God because you're too busy doing other things is pursuing the wisdom of the world. It's like, no, I need God's wisdom to do this stuff.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. So, man, it's a great topic, challenging to me, hopefully to you as a listener, encouraging as well. And so again, we don't want to be unstable. James, their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do. Let's find stability in our undivided loyalty to Jesus. And
Mm.
so let's continue to chase after him with our whole heart and continue to it's a daily struggle, but let's lean on each other, lean on close friends through the journey, day by day, as we seek after him. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Unpacking It podcast. For Luke, I'm Bryce. I'm a sports fan who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans who follow Jesus together. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Unpacking It podcast.